THELAKEOF RAIENDAS when someone asks, how are you? How often do you say, I'm fine? Those two little words have become one of the most common lies we tell every single day. It's not because we want to deceive others, it's because we're afraid to be seen. I'm fine has become our emotional armor, the polite, socially acceptable shield that keeps others from getting too close. But beneath that armor, for many of us, lies a deep, aching loneliness that we don't know how to name. We live in a culture that celebrates strength, independence, and business. The message is clear. Needing people makes you weak. So we push down our longing for connection. We convince ourselves that we're okay, that we don't really need anyone, that solitude equals self-sufficiency. We scroll through feeds filled with smiling faces, laughing friends, perfect brunches, and whisper quietly to ourselves, what's wrong with me? But here's the truth Brené Brown so powerfully teaches. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just human, and humans are wired for connection. When we keep saying, I'm fine, what we're really saying is, I'm afraid. Afraid to admit that we're lonely. Afraid to seem needy, afraid to be judged for wanting more from people. That fear is rooted in vulnerability. The space between what we show and what we actually feel, it's uncomfortable, uncertain, and yes, it feels risky. But as Brené reminds us, vulnerability is not weakness, it's the truest measure of courage. I'm fine may protect us from rejection, but it also protects us from love, friendship, and belonging. Every time we say it, instead of, I'm lonely, I'm tired, or I could really use someone to talk to, we build another brick in the wall that separates us from others. Over time, those walls become fortresses. We become experts at pretending we laugh in public but cry in silence. We perform connection without ever truly experiencing it. Loneliness doesn't always look like isolation. Sometimes it looks like a busy calendar and a full social feed. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. You can have colleagues, classmates, or even family and still feel unknown. The lack of friends is not just the absence of people, it's the absence of emotional presence. It's when we stop letting people really know who we are inside. When we say, I'm fine, we silence the part of us that's crying out for connection. And that silence slowly becomes our story. But underneath it all, there's a quiet truth trying to get out, the truth that we don't want to be fine anymore. We want to be real. We want to be heard. We want to be held. Because deep down, every human heart beats to the rhythm of belonging. When we finally find the courage to drop the armor, to replace I'm fine with actually I'm struggling, we give others permission to do the same. That's how connection begins, not through perfection, but through honesty. Because the moment we stop pretending that we're fine is the moment we start to heal. Shame is that quiet, corrosive voice that whispers in the dark. You're not enough. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue. It simply plants a seed. A small, poisonous idea that grows roots deep into your sense of self. When you struggle with friendship or connection, shame tells you it's because something is wrong with you. You're too much. You're not interesting enough. You're too emotional. You're not lovable. And the most dangerous part, you start to believe it. Brené Brown calls shame the intensely painful feeling that we are unworthy of love and belonging. It's not guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. And that small difference changes everything. Shame convinces us to hide. It teaches us that showing our real selves will only lead to rejection. So we shrink, we perform, we smile wider, talk less, or overcompensate by being the funny one, the busy one, the strong one, anything but the real one. When we carry shame, every failed friendship becomes proof of our unworthiness. We replay moments in our minds, the friend who drifted away, the message left on read, the social circle we never quite fit into. Instead of saying, "That hurt," we say, "I must not be enough." Shame turns pain into identity. It turns rejection into evidence. It tells us, "See, this is why you're alone." And once that belief takes hold, we stop reaching out altogether. We start protecting ourselves from the very thing we need most: connection. Here's the painful irony: shame feeds on secrecy. The more we hide it, the more power it has. But the moment we name it, the moment we say, "I feel unworthy, and I don't want to feel that way anymore," it begins to lose its grip. As Brené says, if you put shame in a petri dish, it needs three things to grow: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you douse it with empathy, it can't survive. Empathy is the light that breaks shame's spell. When someone looks you in the eye and says, "A me too," that's when healing begins. That's why vulnerability and empathy go hand in hand. They are the twin antidotes to shame. But to reach that point, you have to risk being seen. You have to tell the truth about what you feel, even when your voice trembles. Most of us grew up believing that being liked meant being perfect. We thought we had to earn connection by being impressive, funny, successful, or easy to love. But real friendship doesn't grow from performance. It grows from truth. The lack of friends often isn't about others not liking us. It's about us not feeling worthy of being liked in the first place. Shame locks us inside ourselves, but courage, the willingness to be seen, flaws and all, is the key that sets us free. Because when we finally understand that everyone is fighting their own shame story, we realize something powerful: we were never alone to begin with. From a young age, many of us are taught that strength means independence, that the ultimate goal is to be able to say, "I don't need anyone." We wear self-reliance like a badge of honor, proof that we're capable, competent, and unbreakable. But beneath that polished surface, many of us are carrying an invisible ache, a loneliness that's been mislabeled as strength. We confuse self-protection with self-worth, and that confusion keeps us isolated. Brené Brown often says, when we overvalue independence, we undervalue connection. And that's exactly what happens when we turn self-reliance into armor. At first, it feels empowering. You tell yourself you can handle it all: the stress, the heartbreak, the uncertainty. You say, "I've got this," even when you don't. But slowly, that independence hardens into isolation. The same walls you build to keep pain out also keep love out. It's easy to believe that needing people makes you weak, especially in a culture that glorifies hustle, productivity, and emotional control. We scroll through motivational quotes that tell us to be your own hero and trust no one. But that kind of mindset, while it might protect us from disappointment, also robs us of the very thing we're wired for: belonging. Human beings are not meant to go through life alone. We are social creatures designed to thrive in connection, not competition. The armor of self-reliance shows up in subtle ways. It's in the friend who never asks for help, the coworker who always says, "No worries," when everything is falling apart, the person who offers support to everyone but never accepts it in return. It's in the way we say, "I'm just busy," when what we really mean is, "I feel unseen." This armor might look like strength, but it's actually fear in disguise: fear of rejection, fear of being a burden, fear of needing too much. The truth is, we can't do life alone. No matter how strong we are, we all reach a breaking point, a moment when pretending to be okay costs more than admitting we're not. And when that moment comes, the armor that once felt protective becomes suffocating. It keeps us from the tenderness, the empathy, and the comfort that come only from real connection. Here's the paradox Brené Brown talks about. True courage isn't about standing alone. It's about letting yourself be seen when you need others. It's about reaching out when everything in you wants to retreat. It's sending that message that says, hey, I'm struggling. It's allowing someone to sit beside you in your pain without trying to fix it. It's learning to believe that asking for help is not a confession of weakness. It's a declaration of humanity. The armor of self-reliance might make you feel safe, but it also makes you lonely. And slowly, that loneliness begins to whisper that maybe this is just how it is. Maybe no one really stays. Maybe no one truly understands. But the truth is, we can't receive what we refuse to need. We can't be known if we never let anyone in. The walls we build for safety eventually become the cages that hold us back from love, friendship, and belonging. There's a moment, quiet but terrifying, that exists between wanting connection and risking it. That space is what Brené Brown calls the vulnerability gap. It's the distance between saying, I wish I had closer friends, and actually doing something about it. Sending the text, admitting you're lonely, showing up as your imperfect self. Most of us live right in that gap. We stand on one side longing for connection, but we're too afraid to cross the bridge that leads to it. Why? Because vulnerability feels like exposure. It's that naked emotional state where we have no control over how the other person will respond. We might be rejected, we might be ignored, we might be misunderstood. Our culture teaches us to see vulnerability as weakness. But Brené's research flips that story completely. Vulnerability is courage in its purest form. It's the willingness to show up when you can't control the outcome. When we refuse vulnerability, we settle for shallow interactions. We talk, but we don't share. We smile, but we don't open up. We post, but we don't connect. And over time, this emotional distance becomes the quiet backdrop of our lives. We convince ourselves that we're okay, that we don't need deeper friendship, when in reality we're starving for it. The vulnerability gap often comes from fear. Fear of being judged, fear of not being enough, or fear of repeating old hurts. Many of us have tried to be open before and got burned. Maybe you shared something real and someone used it against you. Maybe you trusted a friend who disappeared when things got hard. Those experiences teach us a painful lesson. It's safer not to try. So we close off, we edit ourselves, we show less. But every time we choose safety over openness, we widen the gap. Here's what Brené's work reminds us: connection and vulnerability are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. You can't build intimacy without risk. You can't experience belonging while staying hidden. Vulnerability is the bridge. And yes, it's scary to cross, but it's also where all the beauty lies. Think of the people you love most, the ones who truly see you. That connection didn't come from perfection. It came from moments of truth, from laughter after tears, from me too, from I don't know how to fix this, but I'm here. Those moments are born in the gap. When one person decides to go first, we often wait for others to make the first move, to prove it's safe. But what if you are the one meant to go first? What if courage looks like being the first to speak honestly, to say, I miss you or I need you? Vulnerability is contagious. When one person opens up, it gives others permission to do the same. That's how bridges get built, not through perfection, but through shared humanity. Crossing the vulnerability gap doesn't mean sharing everything with everyone. It means choosing courage over comfort in the moments that matter. It means allowing someone to see the real you, the one behind the smiles, the one who sometimes feels lost. Because every real friendship, every deep connection starts the same way, with one brave moment of truth. And in that moment, if shame is the voice that says, "You're not enough," then empathy is the voice that whispers back, "You're not alone." It's one of the most powerful human experiences we can offer or receive. The act of simply being with someone in their pain without trying to fix it, minimize it, or explain it away. As Brené Brown says, empathy is feeling with people. It's not about saying the perfect words, it's about showing up, heart open, judgment down. When we feel disconnected, lonely, or unseen, what we crave most is not advice, but understanding. We want someone to look us in the eyes and say, "I get it. I've been there too." That small moment, that me too, can melt walls that years of silence have built. Empathy doesn't require solutions. It requires presence. It says, "I see you're hurt, and I'm not afraid to stand beside it." The problem is, many of us confuse empathy with sympathy. Sympathy looks down from a distance and says, "Poor you." Empathy climbs down into the darkness and says, "I'm here with you." Sympathy often disconnects us because it implies hierarchy. One person feels sorry for the other. But empathy builds equality. It says, "I know what it feels like to be human, to struggle, to feel broken, and you're not strange or weak for feeling this way." When there's a lack of friends, what we're really missing is empathy in action. We live in a world full of people who hear us but don't feel us. We're surrounded by noise but starving for understanding. Empathy bridges that gap. It transforms loneliness into belonging. And it starts with small, quiet acts, listening without interrupting, validating without fixing, sitting in silence without needing to make it comfortable. Brené Brown often explains that empathy has no script. There's no perfect response. It's not about saying, "at least," or "you should." Those phrases shut connection down. Empathy sounds more like, "That sounds really hard," or "I can't imagine how painful that must be, but thank you for trusting me with it." These are simple words, but they carry the weight of care. They tell someone, "You matter enough for me to pause and feel this with you." The power of empathy is that it transforms both people, the one who receives it and the one who gives it. When you practice empathy, you stop seeing people as problems to fix and start seeing them as stories to understand. You begin to realize that everyone, even the ones who seem confident, happy, and surrounded by people, carries invisible battles. And that awareness softens you. It makes you gentler, kinder, and more open-hearted. Empathy is also what heals shame. Remember, shame thrives in secrecy and silence. When you share your truth and someone responds with empathy, not judgment, not advice, just compassion, shame loses its power. It can't survive being spoken aloud and met with love. Real friendship is built on empathy, not perfection. It's built on those ordinary yet sacred moments when someone says, "You don't have to go through this alone." It's built when we stop performing strength and start offering understanding. Because when empathy enters a room, loneliness quietly begins to leave. And maybe that's the real power of empathy. It doesn't just connect us, it reminds us that connection was never lost. It was only waiting for someone to be brave enough to listen, to feel, to stay. There comes a point in every person's life when hiding becomes too heavy. You get tired of pretending, tired of fitting in, tired of curating a version of yourself that others will accept. That exhaustion, the quiet ache of not being seen for who you truly are, is one of the deepest kinds of loneliness. And that's where this truth hits hardest. You can't feel belonging if you're not showing up as yourself. Brené Brown says, "True belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are." Yet, most of us spend our lives trying to earn belonging through performance. We adjust our personalities like dials, turn down the sensitivity, turn up the humor, Hide the fear, silence the dreams. We want to be liked, not left out, so we shift into what we think others will love. But that kind of belonging is an illusion. Because the moment people love the mask, not the person, you feel even lonelier. You start to realize you're surrounded by people who don't even know you. The courage to be seen means dropping the mask. Piece by piece, moment by moment. It means showing your real emotions, your real opinions, your real quirks, your real story. It's choosing authenticity over approval, even when it feels risky, because it is risky. Being seen means you might be rejected. It means some people will misunderstand you, judge you, or walk away. But here's the deeper truth Brené Brown teaches. When you hide to be liked, you trade connection for comfort. When you show up authentically, you make space for real love to find you. Think about it. The people who have truly touched your life, the ones you trust and feel safe with, are the ones who are unapologetically themselves. Their openness gives you permission to be real too. Authenticity is magnetic. It doesn't draw everyone in, but it draws in the right ones. The ones who see you, not just your highlight reel. Still, it's hard to show up as yourself when the world rewards conformity. We live in a culture that tells us to blend in, to be easy, to avoid being too emotional, too intense, or too different. But fitting in and belonging are not the same. Fitting in is about changing yourself to be accepted. Belonging is about being accepted without changing yourself. One is performance, the other is peace. The courage to be seen isn't a one-time act, it's a daily practice. It's telling the truth when lying would be easier. It's saying, I don't know. Instead of pretending to have it all figured out, it's letting someone witness your tears instead of hiding behind humor or detachment. And it's refusing to shrink your light just because it makes someone else uncomfortable. When you begin to show up as your real self, something beautiful happens. The right people start to notice you, not because you're performing, but because you're present. You attract authenticity when you live authentically, and slowly the loneliness begins to fade, not because you've surrounded yourself with more people, but because you've stopped abandoning yourself to keep others. Being seen is terrifying, but it's also the birthplace of connection, creativity, and freedom. When you step into your truth, you give others permission to do the same. And that's how genuine friendship begins. Two imperfect people standing in their truth saying, I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. Because the deepest kind of belonging doesn't come from being liked by everyone. It comes from being loved by a few who see all of you and stay anyway. At some point, we all reach a crossroads, the quiet moment where we realize that loneliness has written too many chapters of our life. We look around and see the patterns, the walls we built, the masks we wore, the chances we didn't take, the words we never said. And in that moment of awareness, we face a choice. Do we keep living the same story, or do we gather the courage to write a new one? Brené Brown reminds us that connection gives purpose and meaning to our lives. But to experience connection, we have to rewrite the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we deserve. For so long, many of us have carried a script that says, I'm hard to love. People always leave. I don't need anyone. Those are shame stories, and they don't define who we are. They define what we've survived. Healing begins when we stop letting those stories control the next chapter. Rewriting the story starts with a single act of courage, honesty. The honesty to say, I've been lonely. The honesty to admit, I've been afraid to trust. The honesty to whisper, I want to be seen. That's where change begins. Not in pretending we've moved on, but in acknowledging where we've been. When you name your truth, you take back your power. You're no longer the character being written. You become the author holding the pen, and as the author, you get to decide how the next page unfolds. Maybe the new story isn't about waiting for the perfect friends to show up, but about becoming the kind of friend who shows up. Maybe it's about sending that message you've been overthinking. Maybe it's about forgiving someone or forgiving yourself and making room for connection again. Because healing loneliness isn't about finding more people. It's about relearning how to connect with yourself and others in a wholehearted way. The truth is, life will always bring moments of disconnection. People will disappoint us. Seasons will change. But if we live from a place of courage, empathy, and authenticity, those moments no longer define us. They refine us. They teach us how to stay open even when it hurts, how to love without guarantees, and how to belong without losing ourselves. When you decide to rewrite the story, you begin to see connection differently. It's no longer something you chase, it's something you create. It starts in small moments, a genuine compliment, a shared laugh, a message that says, "Hey, I was thinking of you." These moments may seem ordinary, but they're how extraordinary friendships begin. And maybe that's what Brené Brown's work is all about. The reminder that we are wired for connection, that vulnerability is courage, that empathy is strength, and that love, real, messy, human love, begins when we stop performing and start showing up. So, if you're feeling the lack of friends, remember this: you are not broken, and you are not alone. The story isn't over, it's just unfinished. And maybe today is the day you pick up the pen and write a new one where you stop hiding, start reaching, and allow yourself to be fully, deeply, beautifully seen. Courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. Maybe the bravest thing you'll ever do is send that text, open that door, or whisper, "I miss you." Because connection doesn't begin when others come to find us. It begins when we decide to show up